Morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thanks for tuning in and sharing in this now moment with myself and with one another. If you haven't seen these videos before, welcome back. If you have, my intention is unity and oneness, the highest levels of love light. It's morning for me. I'm having my cup of coffee. And I have so many things I want to go into and share and nerd out on. But I'm going to start off, I'll give a little introduction of where I want to go with this series of videos. First of all, or at the end of this or throughout the middle of this, I'll be doing some interpretations of some writings that I've been doing. I may read the entire one in a different video. I'm just going to pull in from some of the things I've been writing in my flows or channels or whatever we want to label it as. And I want to kind of start off with the labels. I want to talk about some of the energies that have been going on. And I'll just give like a brief synopsis on, I'm in such flow right now, all these words I'm playing with in my mind, but I'll give a little bit synopsis of the energies that I've been experiencing and feeling as a recap. And then I'm going to go right into playing with words and what the vocabulary means, literally in our bodies as well. I want to talk a little bit about the body changes that I've been getting downloads about, and obviously getting downloads for the changes and uploads. We're getting these uploads and downloads from above and from below, from the earth, literally, and all that is around us, plus all of our helpers and guides and all that fun stuff. And I want to talk a little bit about magic, what that really looks like for many of us. So, wow, that's a lot of information, right? So let's just start off with a little energy update. And I want to kind of just go backwards and say, everything that I share and express is my own individual unique expression as a harmonic resonator that I am resonating with through my own experiences, resonating as that I am resonating through this fabric that we're all interweaving and interchanging in this interconnectivity. And essentially, I am a channel for my own, right? I'm playing with all of these words. Networks, support teams, visions, and this is all from my own perspective based on my life experiences. And the reason I want to start off by going backwards and sharing this is because one of the things that I've been seeing from, again, my perspective is that we're really stepping away from this following in the footsteps of another, this follow these 10 steps and this will get you where you need to go in this order. Following a guru, right? Which I keep hearing the message over and over again. We are Groot. We are the gurus. We are the roots. We are Groot. You guys have seen Guardians of the Galaxy. That's what we are. So everybody has their own beautiful expressions and life experiences. And we've got our own shadows and we've got our own reasons that we do things or say things and habit patterns, our own beliefs, our own contracts. So the more we realize how unique and diverse we really are as a unique piece of the one, we begin to step out of this need to fit into someone else's shoes, to fill their shoes. And we step out of the need to walk this way. And we step out of the need to follow in someone's footsteps in that exact way that they have. But what we also do is, it doesn't mean that we don't lead by example, by being who it is that we feel the best being. And others then will follow suit, but not necessarily in the same suit, in the same fashion. Kind of in flow here, obviously. So we are all each in unique individual expressions in a walking skin suit, in our own fashion, in our own way, in our own wave form. Like I'm seeing waves obviously charge, right? This long wave. We each have our own individual unique expression. So the fashion that we are choosing to express ourselves through, the fascia, the network, this tuning energy that we are all creating together in attunement with our own tune, walking to the beat of our own drum. That's what many people are starting to realize. And it can be very scary Because it's like, well, if this person isn't a guru, or if this person no longer fits, I no longer fit in that particular fashion, I no longer choose to make that statement. I no longer choose to communicate and express in that way because it no longer fits with who I am now. What am I now? Where do I go? What are my next steps? Because I don't have another person to walk behind and follow, right? So there's a lot of us that are going through that or that have experienced that before. But the cool thing about all of this is it doesn't mean that we all aren't helping one another. And it doesn't mean that we don't have the assistance and the help to, to keep us on track. And what track is that? It's a multidimensional track that is essentially what is attracting us and we are attracted to, vice versa. We could play with that a little bit. So we begin to recognize that our path and how we choose to wear this skin suit is our own unique individual expression and right. Therefore, we're recognizing that it's not up to someone else to tell us what to do. And of course, this goes back to the sovereignty, which is the energy that many of us, especially in the light worker community, have been hearing for probably 3 years now. That's been like the word sovereignty, sovereignty. And this is an expression of what the sovereignty means to me. It means I'm expressing as I am, and you are expressing as you are in the fabric and the soup that coagulates and kind of keeps us in this reality in our own individual way, yet we're all still connected. And it's beautiful. So it can be a little fearful for people who feel like they are not yet, well, I don't know what next step to take, or I don't know how to create my own magic. So it's okay to follow the guidance of someone else that we resonate with or that we feel good around, or but then the guidance is like, okay, now take that with you and see how that fits into your own reality. And it might only be a teeny tiny little piece. It might be one sentence that somebody shared that essentially activated us into feeling. What I'm hearing is figuring out. And when I say figuring out, I'm literally seeing the figure 8, and I'm seeing the infinity symbol, this infinite code dependency. So we are constantly sending and receiving signals and codes from, to, and through one another. And so even as I'm speaking about this, I see the fabric literally that is all around us like soup as fascia. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. I think I talked about fascia a few times in previous channels that I've done. But I think it's really important to just dip in for a moment to get a visual of what that means. And essentially, as we are becoming code dependent, and that's a play on words too, I want to just kind of share, sidebar. For me, one of the things, I could do a completely separate video on this, but I'm just going to start filling it all in because I forget to do these other videos. Playing with words, we're being guided, I've talked about this before, to get away from having to fit everything and break it down. I woke up singing in my head this morning, break it down again, do 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 do, Tears for Fears. I love to rock out to that. Anyways, having said that, it's like we're breaking it down, but are we spending too much time breaking it down? Like, we're breaking it down so we can integrate it. But if we're trying to get really left brain, and we're going to get into this a little bit later in the video, and we're not combining the left and right hemispheres with the brain, creativity, logic, masculine, feminine, it becomes more of an analytical, logical, primarily masculine way of thinking. And I'm not saying that in a judgmental way. It's beautiful. That's necessary for our development, right? But that's not the only thing necessary for our development and survival. For we are beautiful creators. So we're weaving through this fabric. And the more we can step out of this need to overanalyze and box things in and categorize, what I'm hearing is catalyze. So go from categorize to catalyze. We can categorize certain catalyzations or aha moments that we're having, but ultimately it's all about our own human design and expression in this now moment. So again, this is pulling us away from this idea that we are um, worshiping or hanging on to or following a particular leader. And one of the things about this is, again, that fashion, what are we wearing, may not fit us anymore because we have shifted. But when I say we have shifted, there are some that are saying everyone has shifted, and that may be true. But there are some that are choosing to stay back. There are some that are choosing not to shift. So their decisions and their blueprint is not going to resonate as a harmonic with our fashion. We're going to look at them and go, I don't know what that person is wearing, right? So it does, I'm not talking about obviously the physical, but it is a physical manifestation. It comes through in our words, it comes through in our body language, and it comes through in the tones and the sound frequency that we are essentially, and even when I use the word emitting, it's like we're admitting, right? What are we admitting as admins to our own counsel, to our own bodies? And as we do this, it's what are we sending out? So all of the words that I use, I'm always guided, don't get hung up on the words, because the words are a hang up. And I'm seeing a phone literally hanging up, like the old school with the cord, like this, we get stuck sometimes. So the more we can just let go of this need to box everything in, and that means us fitting into a certain category of, well, I'm a light worker, star seed, healer, whatever it might be. So this is where I need to be, meaning this is what it needs to look like. If that makes sense? Not like this is where I need to be in knowingness. That's different. What I'm expressing is more about the idea or paradigm that we think we have to fit into in order to look a certain way, feel a certain way. It's really coming into our own knowingness. And if we find ourselves going back into a space of, well, that person doesn't know what they're talking about, or this person surely is, whatever those comments in our mind are about that particular teaching, we are being invited to ask ourselves, well, why am I triggered by that? How do I feel about that? Because certain things that people have taught that may have been really, really powerful and useful for a 3D, and I don't even want to get into the dimensional aspects of it, but I will use those words sometimes just to kind of give us a concept. So we existed within a certain reality subset, a certain domain or dominion, if you will, energetically. Can you tell I'm feeling a little fiery today? So we existed within this domain, and from that we generated a certain reality construct from one perspective. Again, we are multidimensional beings. So our perspectives based on our experience and what we're interacting with and how we're interacting with it changes. So if that's the case, why would I wear the same suit, the same fashion that no longer fits into the new reality that I am now aware of and working from or through or operating from? It's a new operating system. So why would I go back to this old domain when it's much slower and it's antiquated is essentially what I'm hearing. I think it's antiquated is the word. So having said that, I'm hearing antiquated, inoculated. Anyways, so we're playing with those words, right? And then what happens is we find ourselves not sure why none of that's working, because we're kind of relying on old patterns, old beliefs, old belief paradigms, and also expectations. Ooh, we could go so many different directions with this. I could do a whole video on expectations. I could do a whole video on habit patterns that we're locked into based on these old beliefs and systems. And maybe I will. If you guys feel like that would be helpful and fun to play with, maybe that would be something to talk about in more detail. But play is what I keep hearing over and over again, because the more we start to look at someone else and decide that that person is wrong or that person doesn't fit into our vocabulary, the more we're looking at someone else and something outside of ourselves. So if it resonates, great. And if it doesn't, why are we looking at it? Why are we focusing on what doesn't resonate with us, that doesn't make us feel our own inner groot, our own inner guru, our own inner root system that is seeking to anchor frequencies that we all have within us? That does not mean that my codes are going to be the same as someone else's from my perspective. I may be receiving downloads about mathematics, but I share that through my writing, if that makes sense. Whereas a mathematician will share them through numbers, and that's their code. Maybe we're receiving the same codes, but we're expressing them through our own unique individual way. And what I'm hearing is it's the pot calling the kettle black. We're looking at someone else saying, and we, me, whoever, I'm seeing people doing this as if, well, that those numbers don't make any sense. Well, my words may not make any sense to that person who is getting the numbers, but it's the same message shared in a different perspective. There are remnants from this 3D system that have essentially been integrated into the new reality that are certainly valuable and not meant to just be tossed to the wayside. But if you have a mathematical equation, for example, this is not something that's my expertise, mathematics, but I'm fascinated by it. I keep getting all of these messages that they're not right. They were, according to a particular paradigm and belief system and reality construct that we made real, and we based a lot of our information on what we knew. And I always go back to what Lee Carroll channels Cryon, the magnetic master. If you haven't checked out his channelings, he's one of the first teachers or channelers that I tuned in with that I was like, wow, this is awesome. You know, you have those moments where he said, one of the first things that changed my world was, what if your guides are you? I've brought this up before, and you don't know what you don't know. So I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but I was like, ooh, my guides are me? How come I don't know everything then? Right? But you don't know what you don't know. So if you're in a 3D polarized, I'm hearing bipolar perspective, and you're really separate from these other truths and this higher knowing, and this isn't a judgment thing, by the way. This isn't like, oh, shame, shame, you're separate, you're dual, you're in the 3D and I'm in this other dimension. That is old paradigm. Again, guru, groot, right? Or shame, I'm not worthy. I'm not worthy. Letting go of those belief constructs, because essentially someone may have this amazing perspective that has been ignored because the other noises were so much louder. And now we're pulling through that one perspective that can help us build in this new paradigm of existence. And don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, right? I guess all these different terms that we've used. Okay, so this in itself is kind of the energy update. I talked a little bit about the divine masculine, feminine. I'm not going to make this video about that, but I will say we're really being invited to hold space. This is an ongoing theme for the divine masculine. And that's, again, maybe another video I might go into flow about, but that's not the purpose of this one. What I'm talking about is, if we're thinking of separation, which is kind of, we're reunifying with ourselves. So that means balancing out the feminine, balancing out the masculine, the left brain, the right brain, the body, and not just being in physical and not just being in mental, emotional. It's this merge of everything kind of coming together. Okay, I wrote down a couple things, so I would try to stay on track. Fascia and fashion. So this theme is, it's not about what's fashionable for someone else, because that fastens us into something, and it doesn't take us, Well, there's two things, two ways of looking at it. I'm hearing it fastens us in, like it straps us in, like it's a seatbelt, and it keeps us from moving faster. But from another perspective, it's the fast way out. Like people sometimes will just hang on to an old concept because they're not doing their own inner work. So that's again a completely separate subject, yet everything is connected. So I'm going to just pause for a moment. Okay, so basically I went on to Wikipedia, and you guys, I invite you to do this when you have certain words that are coming into your reality if you feel guided to. So I'm going to talk a little bit about magic, maybe in this video or the next one, from my perspective. So when I look at the fabric that we're all existing within, it looks like the fabric that's in my body and your body and everybody else's body. So deep fascia is where I'm kind of looking up, and it's under fascial dynamics. Well, talks about superficial and deep. I was kind of guided to go into the deep fascia. So it is richly innervated with sensory receptors that report the presence of pain, I'm sorry, I'm pronouncing some of these words, but that's okay. Change in movement, proprioception, change in pressure and vibration, change in the chemoreceptors, and fluctuation in temperature. So let me just kind of go backwards to that just for a moment. This is fascia. It is richly innervated with sensory receptors, and it's talking about pain, change in movement, change in pressure and vibration, change in the chemical receptors, fluctuation in temperature. And deep fascia is able to respond to sensory input by contracting, by relaxing, or by adding, reducing, or changing its composition through the process of fascial remodeling. That's it, I'm out. That's what we're in. This is how I see the web of life. When I'm doing a reading for some people, well, forget the readings. When any of us are looking at the universe or looking into our bodies, it's surrounded by this fascia. It is an intelligent communication that is connected to all things. It's that simple. So as within, so without, as above, so below. So it's really fascinating. If you were, I did a whole workshop. I had gone through doing yoga and Pilates for some continued education. I chose to do a fascia workshop, and I really was just kind of interested in it. When I was listening to the presenter talk about it, I was just writing and writing and writing notes. And as I was writing it, I couldn't stop. It was magic. It was like every single thing that this person was talking about our human body, I was seeing that as the universe, the cosmos, I was just like blown away. And at the time I couldn't understand, I mean, everything. And I want to just talk a little bit about magic and share that experience. So as I'm hearing about the fascia, as I walked through this hotel that I was staying in at this convention, everything looked like the body. The fountains, the stone, the pictures in my room looked like cells. The plants, I was in such a space of complete mind blown magical flow that it was like everything I looked at was just like the eyes of a child when you just learn something new and you're just like, whoa, so that's what air is. Whoa, that's what it felt like. Now, why am I bringing that into this particular sharing with you guys? Because that to me is magical. When we get into that space where everything is speaking to us through this fabric and we are connecting to that energy, the thought pattern recognition. It's not a thought, but I'm just sharing that as like a good way to give it to a linear representation. It's like you're picking up on the thoughts of the universe, which are my thoughts. And we could just go into a whole other spin. But if you look at fascia, it just looks like a giant web. And this is what's happening. Our universe is responding to the pressure, the vibration, the movement, the chemicals, the temperature, right? And what it's doing is reacting to support that. So it's reacting to support us by relaxing, by contracting, by reducing, by changing. And so are our physical bodies. So I just wanted to dip into that briefly because I could talk about that for a long time because it's so fascinating. It's so fascinating. Oh, I cracked myself up. Anyways, so having said that, I just want to go into fashion. So we're wearing this, right? Playing with these words. If you guys have listened to things that I've talked about before, wait, am I done with the energy update? Well, no, because as I talk about this, I'll be sharing some of the words that have come through to share what's going on in our bodies from my perspective, of course. And essentially, I'm being guided to talk a little bit mixed in with all of this to the wordsmith. My friend Candace calls me a wordsmith. Thanks, Candace. When I say I'm a wordsmith, it's literally, I'm just putting pieces together based on my own perception and perspective. All of us can be or are if we choose to be and play with these words. Many of you watching this are like, yeah, I play with words all the time. But what I saw when I wrote that down is, if you guys ever seen The Matrix, I always tell everybody, recommend watching that movie if you haven't seen it. It's just a classic. But they're called Mr. Smith, and Mr. Smith sees Neo as the virus, when in actuality, of course, Mr. Smith is the virus, or is Mr. Smith the virus? All depends on your perspective. But I play with that because what I've been guided to understand about the words and vocabulary that I'm using is I'm literally the word. So let me go back. All of us have our own way of downloading codes, of uploading codes, and we all have our own way of expressing them. It can be through cooking beautiful foods and being part of the chemical change that happens with those foods, the color expression that the foods become, and using that energy to channel into the body to then express what it feels like to embody that exchange with the plants or beings of the energy of the plant. For example, I'm using that as an example if you're a vegetarian, and that becomes a unified expression, right? You're sharing an experience with that plant, and then you're expressing it through this beautiful, that in itself is channeling. But I'm also being guided just to talk a little bit about that, because again, the beginning of this video, I was kind of sharing how the guidance that I'm receiving is get out of this need to box it all into a category, because some of us are going to go, that's not channeling. This is channeling. This is mediumship. This is clairvoyance. This is clairaudience. This is clairsentience. This is telepathy. Box, 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 box. And while that is true, each of those things or presentations of energies and the way communication is exchanged are true. They're all different. But really, are they? So again, we come back to this oneness and unification. From the way that I share, it doesn't matter to me. It just doesn't. But for someone else, it might be very important to them, because that's how they tune into their codes and their messages. And they need that singularity in presentation to help filter out the other things that maybe aren't what they chose to present, if that makes sense. So a channeler may say, no, I am a trance channeler. I choose not to be a medium, because those are two separate things. So what I do, or what I've been guided as my blueprint, is I do all of those things because I choose to, and I like it that way. I like to tap into beings who have passed on and connect with them. And I like to go into the Akashic record, and I like to tune into the clairsentient and clairvoyant pictures and thoughts that I'm tapping into. And so that's my style. That's my fashion that I wear, which is different all the time. I'm changing my fashion daily, moment to moment to moment. That doesn't mean that's going to work for somebody else, because it can be very overwhelming, just to share. I get overwhelmed at times, and I have to then compartmentalize and categorize what I'm experiencing so that I can bring it into my human experience to then express and connect back into my multidimensionality. So what happens is sometimes that's a lot. So our blueprints are different. Some of us don't want to do things that way, and some of us don't want to do any of that. And that's fine too. Some people are just expressing very linear things, but they don't even realize they're tuning into the multidimensional way to do that. And it's coming through in their channel. We're all channels connected to source, right? To our source stream intelligence, if you want to look at it that way. Okay, where was I? Wordsmithing. Information. So getting away from this need to compartmentalize and categorize things. So as we channel this information, so when I'm looking at all of this, this is magic to me. It's magic. It could just be one thing that I'm noticing my environment communicating with me in a synchronistic fashion. That is magic. Our lives can be magical. We have this idea or concept. I'm just going to kind of change direction here a little bit. That magic has to look a certain way. And this goes back to the beginning of my video, right? We think that a teacher has a certain set of rules that we follow, or a certain, that teacher doesn't have to be a human on earth now. It could be Jesus's teachings, or the teachings of Siddhartha Buddha, or, so each of those teachers, this is exactly the way that we can follow them. But how can we follow that exactly when the writings have been changed over the years and passed down and diluted and shifted based on, that's not necessarily from a place of judgment. It's just based on our own human squirrel. I got a little distracted. Squirrel, like my dog, squirrel. From our own human perspective. So as our perspectives change, right? Again, if we're back in the lower dimensions, we don't know what we don't know. So we might get a beautiful teaching or a beautiful writing, and that's it. That's the only way, because we're seeing in that categorization, compartmentalization, and then all of a sudden something shakes that up, like what's going on now with all of these codes coming in. And we remember, oh, but wait, there's more. Oh, well, of course, that wasn't the way. We're going to add this in, and now this is the way. But again, if we're really multidimensional, then all of those are the way. It just depends on how we utilize them. Okay, so wordsmithing, back to the whole matrix thing. So the vocabulary is a spin of geometric frequencies, and that isn't even exactly the right 100% correct way of defining what language is or what words are. So let's just say it's communication. And in the movie The Matrix, Mr. Smith says that Neo is the virus, right? Well, what I've been shown is that the words that I use and the spin in which I express through the energy that I am sharing as I communicate and express these motions, languages, sounds, words, whatever I'm playing with in that moment, is the virus, is the antivirus for the virus in the human language. And so I just want to talk about that very briefly. I'm not saying that the human language is a virus. I always think back to when Mr. Smith is trying to break down Morpheus, and he's just like, he's just all angry and like, you are this virus. And I'm just like, wow, that's an inverted perspective, but is it wrong? So the words that I'm playing with, because of the blueprint that I've chosen to embody and express through in this bigger blueprint, a body within a body within a body within space, whatever we want to call it. When I say space, I see fluid. I don't know if that's plasma, I don't know if it's ether, but it's fluid. So space to me is the fluid that we exist within. So the fascia, connected through this fascia network of electricity or charge. Anyways, so I'm using these words to break us out of the matrix. And some people get it and some people don't, but it's not a matter of getting it. Some people feel it and some people don't, and that's all good. It doesn't matter because it's broken me out of the matrix. And that's what it's about, is our own individual unique expression and whatever we need to do to fulfill our hearts, to fulfill and complete our heart space. But beyond that, right, our heart space, to assist us in creating the heart drive, to bring all of these codes in and then create from this infinite space of creation, fluid. So what happens is, as I speak these words or share whatever it is I'm sharing in the energy that I'm sharing, it is breaking the cycle. It's using words, and there's that, I've joked about this a lot, the 6-minute abs versus the 7-minute abs. Have you guys seen Something About Mary? When he's like, I've got the best idea, right? 7-minute abs. And Ben Stiller's like, yeah, but what if somebody comes out with 6-minute abs? And the guy just like can't even, doesn't compute, like, right? He's like, this doesn't compute, right? You can't do 6-minute abs. That's not enough. You need 7. I mean, it's funny, but that is essentially what many people are really struggling with, that 1 minute. Time doesn't exist this way. It exists this way. You can't ascend by doing that. You have to do this. And I would know, these different things. It's like these little pieces that are really becoming obvious. This is the way to freedom. This is the way to sovereignty. You could go with this. You could go with that. This is wrong. This is right. Is it though? So having said all that, this is how we do it in our own unique individual expression. Some people are doing it through dance movements. If we're seeing somebody spinning codes, which I love to do, weaving these energies around the heart, feeling with what's going on in the fluid that's around us, then connecting with the fluid that's within us in fluidity, bringing it out in an energy share stream. It's different for everyone. But what it's doing is it's changing the vibration of all that we're interacting with, all that we're interacting with. So inner to outer, we're acting with it. We're creating this energy and frequency. And if we're holding this consistent spin, or we could say long wave trajectory, it changes everything around us. It changes everything from the inside out. So part of the reason I'm bringing that up is to tie it in with the wordsmith, the magic, and essentially I'm feeling I'm seeing it in conversation, especially people that are like, well, I don't feel magical, or I'm not, that's okay. I'm doing beautiful writing that I'm having fun doing, but that isn't changing the world. Yes, it is. From one perspective. From another perspective, if that person believes that, then you're right. So essentially, what is the world? The world is a collective of human beings. It is a fluid that we're all existing in. We're all existing in this space, so to speak. So if I'm coming out, right? I'm coming up. It's coming up. I don't know. And you're in that space, that heart-held frequency, and you're like, I'm going to write this shit. I'm going to write this and share it. I'm going to dance. And it becomes like, it doesn't matter what somebody else thinks. I mean, of course, We're humans. It matters from time to time, but it really doesn't matter. The matter that we are creating or formed within, that we are creating through this form, this information, this existence, right? That we're standing within, that we are existing within our own light, our own column, our own frequency, that we're then expressing out into the void, into the space, becomes a connection to all things. So it's, of course, it's changing everything that we come into contact with energetically. So we may not think we're doing much, but this has a ripple effect that from a lower frequency we can't see. I don't know, frequency, vibration, whatever. I'm using those words interchangeably. So not to get hung up on the virus of word dictatorship. Basically, and one of the things that comes through is, well, how am I going to know what a word means if I don't break it down? Well, that word means different things at different times for different people. Because if I say a word and someone hasn't read a book that's ever included that word and they've never heard it before, they're not going to have an attachment to that word. They're just going to feel maybe what that word represents to them. And that's where I flow. I just kind of play with all of this. So I am choosing to become part of the antivirus to that particular version of software that essentially has been created, downloaded, uploaded, shared, that is no longer fitting within the new reality in which I'm existing within, at least. And so it'll be different for everyone because we're all each in our own unique space, even though we're sharing the space at the same time, a bubble within a bubble, right? I kind of went into 10 different places there, but that's the flow that I'm in today. By the way, if you guys are following and you've made it this far in this video, awesome. Thank you for tuning in. And if you have a specific like subset or subject that you're like, I really want to talk more about this, or can you share a little bit more about this, or I'm interested in this. And if I can flow into it, I would be happy to. And that kind of gives me a little bit more of a direction sometimes, just a thought. I'm happy to give it my go. So that's what I'm doing with the words. So the words are literally what I keep referring to them as soundology, and it's a communication. So I then communicate as this, I'm going to call myself a neosmith. I'm duplicating. So I'm using words that have already been created, and then I'm spinning them into new creations. And then this is essentially triggering. And that's something I want to go into also with the energy update. A lot of what we are doing is triggering others because, again, it's the 6-minute versus 7-minute abs people, right? No judgment. I get triggered too still. Again, I'm human having a human experience as a multidimensional being in the now moment. So if I'm not, if I haven't integrated something, it's going to show up for me. And very obviously right now, in case you guys haven't noticed for yourselves. But there are those people that are like, no, there is no 6-minute. It's only 7-minute. So that word is essentially what's creating our English vocabulary and language. Well, English is a subset of a vocabulary that was originally created a long time ago. So it has essentially shifted and changed. I got to pause this just for a moment. That was my husband whistling at me. Whistle while you work, la 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 la. Okay, I guess I should get into the body because that just puts me into a whole other spin with the 7 dwarfs and the chakra system and the mining for heart of gold. So squirrel, got a little distracted again. Oh, so yeah, there are going to be those that are really triggered by this and they just feel like that's safer and it's more logical to box things in. And yeah, but again, we don't know what we don't know. So we may not know what truly the original linguistic system looked like. The oldest ones, to my knowledge, that we have, I mean, we have a lot that are even older than Sanskrit or the Hebrew language. We have older ones that we meet, like Aramaic, I think, but but what's before that? And what's before that? So again, multidimensionality, we only have available what we've seen in the physical. We don't know what we don't know. So many people are, I'm sorry. Okay, so this is the magic and this is the flow. So I guess we could just talk a little bit about magic. To me, that's magic. Alchemy, right? We're shifting, we're changing things. So we're alchemizing, we're changing, and we're essentially moving with all these energies. So where am I at? I am gonna, wow, I'm already like almost an hour into this, I think. So fascia, fashion, new fashion, body, brain. I didn't go into my writing yet. And I'm going to do that. I'll do a little bit of that, and then I'll do a part 2 of the video. So I'm just going to pause for a moment. And before I go into the writing, I just want to go back and share. All of this is for some of us it's really new. For some of us we've already been doing this and we're very comfortable with this. But really it's about holding space for ourselves and with one another. So if we know someone who's the 6-minute abs versus the 7-minute abs, it can be challenging when we've activated a more multidimensional aspect. So it can be challenging from the human, right? Or a little bit of the ego to then be able to communicate. All right, let me rephrase that. It's only coming from the ego if we're judging. And I'm not even sure if that's 100% the right word. But if we're judging our experience with that person as in, well, it's too bad they don't understand this. They're just not as advanced as I am. That's ego. Or they're just not awake. That could be true, but how are we feeling about that? What space are we creating around that, right? And when I say space, again, I always think of fluid. So what are we passing through this membrane and this fluid that essentially is connecting through the fascia and the web? That is, are we exerting pressure? Are we contracting and pulling away? What is it that we are doing that's having this effect on the environment and the people around us? So we're going to have that from time to time. But again, we're learning how to kind of, or we know, okay, we're not resonating and that's fine. The end. We don't have to take it into a compartmentalization and say, well, why? And what is it that isn't fitting and all of this? That was kind of an old tool system. Now it's more of a feeling system. So if we do that, then we're going into 6-minute apps, right? If we're going into a place about judgment and all of that, then we are actually on that same level and not recognizing it, recognizing it. We think we're in one space when reality we're in another, and that happens, right? So I'm just going to do a little so being patient with ourselves, not beating ourselves up for having these experiences, right? But then coming back to embodying this mastery or this magic that just allows everyone to create from their own. I keep seeing like a chemistry room and like everybody's showing these different alchemizations that they've created and adding maybe the same ingredients over here. And then this person adds a different one and says, oh, look what I created. It's blue. And the other person goes over here and goes, oh yeah, I did the same thing. And then I added this, this, and that, and it became purple. And then the person over here says, I screwed up. I blew up my experiment. I got to start over. And we just kind of laugh about it and go, oh, can we help you? And then the person over there, the 6-minute ab person going, I'm not playing with any of you guys. You guys are all idiots. That's all around, right? All of those examples are essentially what we're working with. So then do we just go, well, that person's an idiot because they think I'm an idiot and I'm not going to play with them either. Then there's like this. So then, it's just giving that individual the space to be an individual, right? Okay, so if you've made it this far, I'm going to go about 15 more minutes, I think, maybe 20 more minutes. Okay, so I'm going to go into a little bit about what I wrote. and a little bit of an interpretation, and then I'll do another video just on that in case you guys want to word nerd out with me. I'm just going to do a quick share screen, and I'll do that now. I made this pretty big, and hopefully it's easy for you to read. Let us go into another spin. Let us dive into a new quandary. Div into, divinate. So I'm just going to stop right there. Well, no, I'm not. I'll read the paragraph and then I'll come back to it. We are quarrying, if you will. There are questions that are coming up that are surfacing based on a subset of genetic impulses that are being introduced into the brain chemistry. The brain chemistry is creating a new bandwidth, if you will. It is creating a new heartbeat, resonance measured on a chart. This new creative speaking a new language from one perspective, and we invite you to play with these words again as a gentle reminder that the way you communicate is part of your gift, the way you allow yourself to play with certain tones and languages that are coming in are part of the many ways in which the universe weaves its spectrometry. I'm going to stop right there briefly. So I'm going to look back and just kind of share all of these words have a play on words. If you go to quandary, right, it says a state of great difficulty or perplexity, yet it's a word of unknown origin. So this is exactly what I was just talking about. And I'm laughing at this a little bit because I'm just going to stop share for a moment. I didn't know that was what would come up when I looked up the word quandary. Yet a moment ago, I was just talking about in this particular presentation. So I haven't even totally corrected this writing yet. It's a very rough draft. I haven't even finished typing up the last 2 minutes of what I recorded. But I was just speaking about we don't know what we don't know. So how do we know that our words haven't been inverted and used against us from one perspective, from that particular perspective of duality, right? So we might, as scholars, know that this word represents this, but on an energetic scale and harmonic, it also represents other things that it can be then fluidly used as a living language, not boxed into a vocabulary that is limited in its presentation. So this becomes more of a limitless play on words. So when I looked that up, so I'll just reread that one more time, and I'm not going to go through this whole thing. This is it. I'm just going to go through that first paragraph. Let us dive into, or let us go into another spin. Let us dive into a new quandary. So let us dive into another state of great difficulty or perplexity. No, we're going to dive in and we're going to open it up. And ironically, if I open that up and look at it, it's a word of unknown origin. So we're going to go into something new. We don't know where it started. Even the pronunciation is unsettled in old dictionaries. And it says perhaps it is a quasi-Latinism based on Latin quando. And quando is when, what time. So if I look at this and it's related to qui, Q-U-I, which is who. And just yesterday I was talking, I don't know if I posted the video, but who am I? Who, what, where, why, how? Let's just put all of that into a new space of communication. And then if I go into this, let us go into another spin. Let us dive into a new quandary, a new set of time. When, what, where, why, who am I? So that one word that we don't even know where it originated from, really. How can we say it only means one thing? Because it doesn't. And think about all of the people that are named after Kuan, right? Kuan Yin, for example. And then I'm saying, let us go into another spin. So a couple of things. If you haven't checked out Dan Winter on fractalfield.com, I mention him in almost every video. I invite you to do that. He has a beautiful set of visual tools to help understand what language is on a spin of a toroidal field. And that just blew my mind when someone told me, hey, Carrie, you might want to look that up. So I'm sharing that. Robert Ward Grant just posted something. Maybe he shared it from another, maybe like his consciousness. I'm sorry, I can't remember who it was, but I just shared it on my Instagram at Keep It Simple Starseeds post. Just a quick little thing. It inspired me to write. I see these pictures and it inspires me to spin out my own geometries, my own letters, my own waveform in physical formation through the sound, through the fluidity that we are all communicating within. So I'm saying, let us go into another spin. That is spinning off the toroidal field, and everything has this toroidal field around it. And we're diving into this new quandary, divinate to div in it. So if we look at that, right, dive in, but that also is a play on words of divinate. So what is it to mean when we divinate, right? We'll think about that. I'm going to go into that in a different video, but we are quarrying, if you will. So we're pulling up from this quarry, and that's the rocks, right? We're pulling up these nutrients and this information that's been buried. When you quarry something, you can tell the age of something. You see the strata layers, the fascia layers, right? You dive into, so now we're pulling up from this new meanings. And when I write this, I'm just in flow, right? I'm just writing what comes through, and I play with it a little bit. There are questions that are coming up that are surfacing based on a subset of genetic impulses that are being introduced into the brain chemistry. So I wanted to just kind of go into this, and then I'll flow into the next video to share. Hopefully some of the things I shared earlier are making this vocabulary, helping this vocabulary make more sense. But when I say make more sense, it isn't necessarily about understanding it. It's literally feeling into the sense of the word. Am I still sharing screen? I don't think I am. I'm not. So make more sense of the vocabulary, right, is feel into it, because that spin creates a feeling. This is where the mantras come from that all of the yogis participate in, to activate, to integrate, to expand into, to increase the frequency. This is, everything is this sound, right? And when I say this, I'm hearing a sounding board. So I just wanted to kind of go in. Hopefully, I'm going to end on this note and just share that everybody's got their own magic. And I'll do a video a little bit on what that looks like for different people. Maybe I'll do a video more on wordsmith. Maybe I'll do a little bit more on the feminine masculine, but I'm going to end on this note for this particular share. And hopefully you found it more 6 minute than 7 minute stuck. Hopefully it expanded and you felt like it was fun to dive into. So until the next video, thank you so much for tuning in, and in love and light, namaste.